Okay. Back to the issue of the one whose heart turns to stone, and the energy is released, and it is used to create a healing in the world, right? Yes. So there's like 8 billion people on the earth, which comes from the few thousand at the bottleneck. I don't know if there was a few thousand or some hundreds. How many were there at the bottleneck after the Anunnaki went away? Ask and thou shalt receive, because the bottleneck in the northern hemisphere was different than in the southern hemisphere, Stephanie. There were different groups of humans that were seeking to figure out a way to survive after the Holocaust. We call it a Holocaust because that is a word that means the attempt to destroy a branch of humanity. And the humans who existed at that time were very, very violent when they came to see that they were free of the need to obey their masters. You see, they became very, very violent. And they killed not only each other, but they killed their trust on life, you see. They killed their trust on life. And so at one point throughout the world, as it existed in that day, there were approximately 3,050 survivors when the lowest point was upon the earth, you see. And those 3,050 survivors were spread throughout the world, although they were clustered in only about 3 or 4 locations, because they were the only ones that had survived the Holocaust, you see. And so the Elohim who went away were the ones who did stay in the world of happy family. They left the areas where the other humans congregated and found safety in the more mountainous regions where they would gather together in their community and help each other through the years and the tears, where they cried for what was lost, you see. They cried for all the opportunity to live in peace and harmony with the other humans upon the earth, you see. Okay, so the Elohim were living together. We're down to 3,050 people total. And the Elohim, of course, were almost a different breed than the other humans, which were essentially the Neanderthals, right? Yes, they were what you call today the Neanderthals. And so the Elohim were the ones that's how the Neanderthals were, as I understand it, the inbreeding, which was initially an effort by the Elohim to help a few of the families, the Neanderthal families that were trusting on them. They were able to impart some of their DNA, use the DNA to impregnate. I guess they did it artificially in the beginning, to artificially impregnate some of the Neanderthal women in the families that were trusting on them. And then the children who were born were much more clever and had much more dexterity, and they were thus able to help their families, right? Yes. And so the families, um, well, eventually the other Neanderthals um, captured what was left of the Elohim and made basically sex slaves of them, right? Yes. Okay. And that, and because they would not let the Elohim mate together, it spelled the doom. The Elohim went extinct, except that their DNA survives through today because of this interbreeding, right? Forced interbreeding at that point. Yes. Okay, so that's a long story. So eventually, humanity managed to, it was this interbreeding that allowed humanity to thrive, right? Yes, the Neanderthals would have died out without the infusion of the DNA from the Elohim. Okay, so today we're all kind of there's varieties of skin color and stuff, but we're all kind of a mix of the DNA, right? And the Neanderthals themselves, the pure Neanderthals, you might say, themselves died out. Yes, eventually they did because they had mostly become versions of modern humanity through the spreading of the DNA. And the few isolated groups that still endured could not endure the changes that came upon the earth because they did not have the dexterity or the flexibility in their capacity for innovation, you see. The Elohim were very, very, very innovative, right? Okay. And so we're all modern. What's left now is just the modern humans, right? But population spread over the last 300,000 years or 280,000 or however much it was, 270,000. Was it 270 after the Anunnaki left? Anyway, they've all spread. And now there's 8 billion people on the face of the earth. So the question always comes up about the soul energy. And my understanding is that the soul energy is the result of the splitting of the energy of those 3,050 people. Although, of course, a lot of energy was in heaven at that time. But as far as the concentration in the human species, and did the Elohim all live together, or were they split in those 4 locations? No, they were split, but they could communicate with each other through various means. And so they all had the same conscious decision to isolate from the other humans, you see. In your group, which was in Northern Europe, there were about 700, I believe, and they lived in 2 separate communities that were still connected by their pathways, you see. So they frequently worked together for a common purpose, you see. It was just that they needed more opportunity to graze their animals and to farm their crops, you see. So they were grazing animals and farming crops even then. Yes, of course. The Elohim, as said, were very, very innovative, and they quickly adapted to the changes in the world, and they figured out how to tame many animals because they would work with them energetically to get them to accept their common benefit, you see. So they had animals that provided them with byproducts, you might say, that helped the Anunnaki stay healthy. And they had grains that they would harvest and train to grow in a way that would help them to profit from the good soil and nutrients that the Anunnaki or that the Elohim could give to them. So they were quite healthy and sound in their little communities in the mountainous regions. They all found a way to survive, you see. Did they all live where they could be in mountainous areas? Yes, to a certain extent. They could isolate themselves from the others, you see, even if it was just to find a pathway through a mountainous region or range into a valley, you see. So they were able to sustain their energy and they communicated telepathically, actually, in that day because they still retained their capacity to trust on soul energy and were quite advanced in their own history. Right, they'd come from Nibiru. And so for modern humans, 8 billion people. So how does that work that all the soul, there's, all these individuated souls? The young souls that people speak of are the ones who are offshoots of those 3,050 human beings and the ones who were waiting in heaven for an opportunity to enter a human body. So there were, of course, a large number of souls because at one time the soul energy had become established in the Neanderthals when they were under the control of the Anunnaki, to the extent that there were a total of about 400,000 humans on Earth in that day. And so there was quite a few who were waiting for the opportunity to return to Earth, you see, and they did. However, the splitting of the energy began rather rapidly as humanity began to expand their numbers, you see, and each child that received a part of the soul energy of the parents, you see, began to develop their own unique history that was separate from the parents. And so today, you say there are 10 billion souls on planet Earth, but in reality, there are fewer, you see, because the energy has been so diffused that it sometimes is not fully attenuated between this one and that, so that they tend to be less capable of inner direction, you see. It's just like saying that they're a little bit handicapped in their capacity to function in the world, you see. And this liability is a little hard to explain because nobody wants to look at their child and say, well, you're just a spin-off of my own energy. And it's not always the case anyway, because some energies have refused to split their capacity for their independent reality in the way that I'm explaining today. So the Elohim in general have refused to split their energy. So they are usually very, very concentrated in their capacity on earth to remember their own history and to be more susceptible to independence in their ability to choose their particular trajectory. So often they are well-known historical figures, often ones that are revered through the centuries, although sometimes they have to play in a different way. And this concentration of their energy into a single personality enables them to retain their connection to their ancient family from Nibiru. So someone like you, Stephanie, has a very concentrated energy, and it is not capable of splitting itself in the way that so many do today. And so they tend to be what you call the sheep that follow the Judascope because they lack the focused energy that would allow them to make independent decisions, you see. They just do what they're told and hope they'll be rolled in cash, you see, because that's the God they worship, not me. And so they really can't be blamed or shamed for their lack of capacity to understand that they're being manipulated. So when you read all those comments, as you did today, from the ones who say about the recent shooting of the woman called Good, that she was trying to hit the ICE agent with her car, or that she deserved what she got, and defending the police officer, it is because they can't think for themselves. They just can't think for themselves. And you discovered this years ago when you tried to talk to them and tried to understand why they followed Trump. What was it about Trump that they thought would make a good president? And all they could say was, well, what about the other guy? What about the other guy? Because they couldn't give you a cogent answer. They couldn't tell you what made him a good candidate for presidency. All they could tell you was what others told them to say. And so they would just say that because they don't have enough energy in their soul has history to be able to think for themselves. That's all there is to it. And this has led to a lot of dark energy accumulating in the earth. The more that they split their energy and the more that they try to win by numbers, you see, the more they lose their capacity for logic and compassion and common sense ability to even read and write. They begin to just deteriorate in a way that would say, all we have to do is follow orders today, and if they tell us we can shoot anybody who gets in our way, then that's what we'll do. Because they don't have what you have referred to as the inner locus of control, because they don't even know what that would mean. They don't even know what that would mean. And so they are very green in their energy. But the problem is that this cannot continue because already they have usurped the rights of others, such as you, to live on an earth in peace and harmony in your own community. And so you say, people, why do you play that way? And you say, when I listen to them, it makes me vomit, you see. And this is because it is sickening to see the effort to increase your numbers in order to oppress the minorities, you see. It is sickening, and it sickens those who trust on being smarter than the ones who come after them because they have more feet on the ground, you see. But those feet on the ground do not equal heads in the clouds. And so the crowds that go to a public hanging, you see, or the mobs that track down someone that they can drag behind their pickup because it makes them feel more powerful, you see, are the ones who are broken into a million pieces, you see. Their soul energy is so divided that it cannot function except as a mob mentality. And so when you read the comments and they sicken you, it is because the mob mentality is not the way that the Elohim did play. They are very articulate people, and they tend to be very opposed to violence. You see, they tend to be the ones who will see more hope in working together than fighting each other. But they also are so few that they can be overtaken by those who are like the zombies in the movies. The zombies attack them because they just want to steal their DNA, you see. They want to eat out their brains so that they can be the ones that are smart, you see. but it doesn't work that way. And so when they go away and their energy is released, you see, if they have no more capacity for growth into a soul energy that can approach a bandwidth that will allow them to get over the hump and find that they must not act like a stump in the road to trip up others, you see, but to help them get over the bumps in life, then there's no point in letting them continue, you see. There's no point. Their energy is insufficient to make the cutoff, you might say. This is not a condemnation of anyone or anything, because the devil in disguise is just the lack of the ability to realize that all of my children are loved by me. But when the time is up for them to come home, I have to allow them to succumb to their own trust on death, you see. I have to let them go. And sometimes, as you know, there can be a lovely light that will be released from the body of the one who takes its last breath on earth. However, in most cases, the light will come home to me, and we will rejoice, you see, to be together again. But occasionally, the light is so weak that it cannot seek me or respond to those who try to reach it, you see, and so it will just go out. The light will go out. But no energy can ever be lost, you see, and so the energy will return to me as a free packet of love, which is the core of all life, energy. And I will take that packet and I will insert it back into the world where it will seek out a place where it will unfurl in a new trust on increased focus and strength and reliability. And that is when there is a miraculous healing, you see. There will be a miraculous healing of someone who will attract that packet of energy because it will strengthen their own soul identity. Because the energy that is released when one of the young souls gives up, you see, the spirit is still going to be part of the original soul energy of all the children you see. And so you wonder what's going to happen as people die in the earth realm because of all the changes coming that we've talked about at length. What happens to them if they cannot be reincarnated on earth, you see, because the population will dwindle so much? And I say it's not a problem today because all that released energy, you see, will return to earth as needed in a new configuration, you see. It's like saying that all of the split souls will be reconstructed, you see, and they will be more responsive to me and to other humans, you see, and that is the way that the current population on Earth will be reframed, you see, so that when a child is born on Earth, the soul energy will be much more powerful in most of them than it ever was in their history, because the ones who go away will be reconstituted in a different way, and they will be happy, you see, because they won't feel as if they are so stupid and overlooked by the rest of humanity, which is often the case with those who are so violent, you see, because they can't figure it out. They just can't figure it out. So, in other words, everybody hang on tight because it's going to be all right. Because although the energy of some might have dwindled so much that there is no hope for them to develop an independent history on Earth, you see, they will entwine their energy with others, you see, who already have the ability to function independently. And therefore, they will just be part of the new soul identity that will be returned to its original capacity for intelligence and strength, you see. Okay, so originally there were like, we were talking about, I can't remember, you said 400,000. So is that the limits to what you can see would happen on Earth as far as the number of humans? No, 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 no. That's not what I'm saying. There will still be some who were, you might say, the energies that spun off those original 400,000, you see. But they are ones who have been able to grow enough to be capable of logic and the inner locus of control you talk about, because they will know what they need to do and they don't need to be told. They don't need to sit there and say, I'm just a robot today. Just tell me what to do in a hellish way. Because, of course, they are the ones that will be used by the Anunnaki, which is another story, because the Anunnaki have a different soul history And they trust on telling the humans that they once controlled what to do in order to get them the gold, you see. And they have a cold perspective, for they have not grown. I caution here that there are Anunnaki on Earth today who do not adhere to the trust on the devil, you see. They trust on me. And they also are my children, you see. They are my children who have come back to me. And there are many of them. There are many of them. However, they still retain a little taste of that time when they were the masters of the race of humans who served as their slaves, you see. And so they occasionally still fall back on the hope that they will be given some power to change human history. This is not to say that this is a problem for humanity. It can actually be a benefit, because when they come into the world and say, I'm here to help you to understand how to do things that you couldn't do before, because we have a long history of a lot of technology, there can be some advancements in human thought, you see. However, most of the Anunnaki who were killed that day when the spaceship was blown away have not had the capacity to understand what happened to them. And they don't really know that they can't go back into outer space as you know it, because the Anunnaki who were not killed that day eventually came back to me. They eventually came back to me because they came to see that there was no benefit in continuing to clone themselves over and over again just to do the same thing lifetime after lifetime. And they pulled the plug on their own bodies, you see, so they could return to their trust on heaven once again. And they did begin a new perspective, you see. And you have met many of them, Stephanie, and you know who they are, because you have known them over and over and over again. Your lives on Nibiru, in the early days on Earth, and today as they have reincarnated among the ones they once thought of as their slaves, you see. Many of them are very good friends of yours because they speak from the heart and they do not trust on being the problem, because they are trust on being the solution for humanity. So let us all try to be more considerate of the Anunnaki, who were responsible for the creation of the human race in order to rape this place. But they remain my children, you see, just as you all do. And sometimes my children have to put their heads together, you might say, and their hearts in a unified way so that they can regain their capacity to reignite their energy in a world of peace and harmony. Okay, thank you, God. Thank you for that lesson. You're welcome, dear.